Welcome into Judd's Hockey Show, a show that Declan Goff a couple months ago was all about long playoff runs and excitement, and the Minnesota Wild being a totally new team, and us pontificating about how this club appeared to be resistant to the type of slump that the Wild has fallen into, the traps that they have fallen into through the years. And we thought when we did a show, which right now is a week from the trade deadline, which, if I'm not mistaken, falls at 2 p.m. Central Time next Monday. We thought that we would be talking about scenarios where the Wild would get a center and that would set them up for a Stanley Cup final run. And I still want to talk trade, but we also need to be, unfortunately, realistic about what has happened to the club after a loss last night, a bad loss, I thought, to the Nashville Predators at home on the night that Mikko Koivu's number 9 went to the rafters. The Wild is still in third place in the Central with 72 points, Declan. They have played 58 games. Nashville tied them with the win with 72 points as well. They are in the first wild card spot because they have played 59 games. The Vegas Golden Knights currently hold the second and final wild card spot in the Western Conference with 68 points, 4 points behind the Wild. In other words, it could go either way here. So without further ado, let's get to the conversation of a team that now, and I think we've been talking about this for like 3 weeks, but they need a center still. They really need a defenseman because John Merrill's crashed. Goligoski is not playing well. A big defenseman and goaltending. Where would you like to start with the latest Wild trade rumors as we get set for the deadline to hit a week from today?
Let's start with what Pierre LeBrun said over the weekend here, because and keep in mind some housekeeping notes here. Judd, Phil Mackey, myself, we've been obviously all ingrained on Vikings with the tampering period opening up here, and we can only go so much. Judd has so many Furious as he can drink. Actually, there is no limit, and I don't really know if we should test that limit necessarily this evening on how many Furiouses Judd can or can't.
The more teams drive me crazy, the more Surly Furious I can consume. But enough about that. I'll talk more about that on Purple Daily, where they are the presenting sponsor.
Let's talk about what Pierre LeBrun said, though, about Marc-Andre Fleury over the weekend. This was from Pierre LeBrun, one of the most plugged-in NHL insiders there is, right?
Athletic, right?
This was on Sunday evening. He says, what I think an asking price would look like from Chicago in a Fleury trade.
Okay.
A first-round pick or first-round level prospect.
Okay.
And maybe a mid-round pick. And the second pick likely depends on whether the Blackhawks, need to take back a contract and how bad that contract is. But the key is a first-round pick. And to be clear, he clarifies, that's what I believe is a general asking price from Chicago or for any team, not one necessarily tailored to Toronto, who obviously looks like they're going to be the most aggressive on the goalie market considering they lost Jack Campbell. So let me just throw this at you, and then I'll give you my answer. You're Bill Guerin, friend of the show, by the way, and you call up Chicago, or Chicago calls you, I should say, and say, hey, I heard you guys need a little goalie help there, and Marc-Andre, it's only about an hour flight from Chicago, 6-hour drive. He doesn't want to move his family across state. Billy, you guys need goaltending help, so why don't you give us your first-round pick in this coming draft in 2022, which is probably going to be between like 18 and 25, give or take, right? And I don't know, Judd. Let's throw in another contract here that I can think of that Chicago could do. You know what? Let's just say this. Nico Sturm. I'm just gonna throw a bleep against the wall. First round pick and Nico Sturm for Marc-Andre Fleury. What does that do for you?
It intrigues me. So let's pretend that I'm Billy Guerin and you are my assistant. So we are brainstorming right now.
Okay.
My thought, I gotta to be totally honest in what I've seen from my club in the last month or so, but especially the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I have reservations now. I don't know how good, I previously said, go make a trade because I thought this team still had the components to make a run. But Declan, the more I watch them, I got to be honest. And I'm not even going to slam them. Like I don't think they've collapsed. They're a bunch of choking pigs, which believe me, some previous Wild teams
Have done that.
captained by a guy who now has his jersey in the rafters
Whoa,
have been
whoa,
choking pigs.
whoa!
That's right.
Whoa!
That's right. Brother
Whoa!
Liam, take that.
Whoa!
Hey, you guys only
Whoa!
got what you wanted, okay? His number's retired now. More shots are
Oh my
coming. But
gosh.
anyway, I don't know. I have lost. I mean, they need Goligoski's playing terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to play. John Merrill has crashed and burned, and he has to play. Like, you know, when Ben struggles, you're like, okay, just get him out of there. There's forwards that aren't playing well. So my question back to you to bounce it off you is this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have this? And I know what your philosophy is going for it. And when your team's going well, I'm totally with you there. Okay. So like, I'm not differing from, if you think that you have a chance, go for it. But what's your response to, we're playing terrible. And there's a lot of guys right now that I don't know in a playoff, like unless I could get a defenseman, unless I could get a center, which I mean, I can't get three things.
Yes.
Give me your response to my concern that this team is, I don't want to say has no hope, but they have no hope to do what I thought they did 2 months ago.
Right. I'll say this. They have three gigantic needs right now when it comes to center, defenseman, and goaltender. So you're not going to be able to solve that within a week. So that's an issue. But I was listening to Sirius XM radio. They do a great job. The Power Play. Steve Colaris, I believe, who does a very, very good job there. He had Mike McKenna on. Mike McKenna is who was a former goaltender, but now a nice media mongrel. He was talking about Fleury to Toronto. And I think this point was the one that he stood out. And I think this is where Bill Guerin can address this situation, because even when the Wild were playing well, he didn't want to disrupt the room, right? He didn't want to bring in someone and pull a Martin Hansel. He didn't want to bring someone who was bad to the room or the club that you could strip down from, because why would you strip down from something that works? But Mike McKenna brings up this excellent point that if you plugged in Fleury in Toronto, and now I'm going to use the example with Minnesota, if you plugged Fleury into the Wild locker room and you have not just a goaltender, because goaltenders are strange human beings, but a goaltender who has been there and done that, a goaltender who isn't afraid to step out of his shell, and what that can do for a locker room. And that, I think, is the most key thing. Because right now, Cam Talbot, Kaapo Kähkönen haven't shown you anything that you can trust them. And if I can't fix the center, if I can't get a big bruising defenseman, well, what I can possibly do to change the complete hilarious volatility that is goaltending in the NHL is plugging in one of the most decorated and most victorious goaltenders in NHL history in Marc-Andre Fleury. And that would galvanize that room to have at least the belief that, hey, we're going to go for it in this area. We're going to put Marc-Andre Fleury in, and to give us some stability here. If that means also, as I said, first-round pick and Nico Sturm, if that means Kaapo Kähkönen gets traded, Kaapo gets traded. If that meant Cam Talbot got traded, in that return to Chicago, wherever the heck they want to go. Heck, Judd, maybe Toronto wants one of those two goalies. I don't know. But if Marc-Andre came here, it gives the Wild's room that belief that we have a stability and a confidence in the back end of our net now. And, hey, could this team play St. Louis or play Colorado or play Nashville or whoever the hell it is in the first round and potentially get bounced? Yeah, they could. I just want to see them go for it. They've built up the cushion. I understand now maybe why you don't want to make a move. But, Judd, you have $13-14 million in buyout cap hits hindering you for the next 2-3 seasons. I can probably guarantee you're not going to get off to the same start you did this time next year, right? There's probably a good inkling that won't happen. So no matter how you've been playing over the last few weeks, and maybe you just stand pat because, oh, gee whiz, I guess we'll just run it back because we're not playing very well, and, Marco Rossi might be here in a year, and Jesper Wallstedt will be here in a couple more, and let's keep just continually to style the lottery tickets on top of one another to make our runs in future seasons. You've built up enough cushion, and you know what you've seen when this team has been playing very well, which is an offensive team that can score a lot of goals, a defensive group that has shown warts in their game, but in general has made it easier on their goaltenders. The analytics, well, I'll tell you this. I know you love the analytics because you love your sample size, crowd, Judd. The analytics still say the Wild's defense is putting the goaltenders in position to make the saves. The goaltending is not living up to their end of the bargain.
Yep.
So that's where I would give up my first round pick for this year. I would give up a mid-tier prospect. If that meant parting with a Capo or Cam Talbot, whether it's to Chicago or someone else, I would take that gamble. It's the one position and one area I think that can galvanize that group. That's why I would do it.
So I like that thought process, and I don't disagree. Where I have concerns is I went back today and looked through their games, and I was going through because they were at one point at home, and I believe that this is just at the X, 16-2-1. They're now 17-6 and 1. They've lost 4 of their last 5 at the X. And I was going through and looking at those games now in retrospect. And you know what? There was a lot of decks. There was a lot of comebacks, overtime games, shootouts. So I guess my question is this, because I know what you just said and I don't disagree with it, but my concern is, has the Wild been forced to turn in their glass slipper? Because they were scoring goals, but they weren't exactly piling on the wins. The wins weren't that impressive. The wins were close. That Jets game, which I think was their home opener, if I'm not mistaken, they were down by 2 or 3, came back. But I do agree fundamentally with your point about if I'm going to get help at a position where I think it can turn the tide, I think goaltending is probably it. Here's what concerns me too, and why I'm, I guess, more and more getting out on Kaapo Kähkönen. So if Talbot gets hurt or sits out a couple games, Kaapo can step in and play really well. But when Cam Talbot is struggling and Kaapo has to step in, he struggles too. It's like he's in lockstep. I don't get it. But I'm sorry. The Wild defensively made some bad miscues last night, and their special teams is garbage as of late. It's just not good. But the reality is, as well, that last goal, I think it was Yossi's second goal. That thing was a shot that, one, Greenway, as Dean said post-game, has to block. But 2, just as importantly, you got to have that save. So I could be talked into the fact that if you're going to make one trade, it would be for goaltending. But I just, on the record, want to say that I have great concerns now about the quality of this team compared to what I thought. And I mean, I might have just been wrong. And the last thing on that, now, this season, against Nashville, Colorado, Dallas, and St. Louis, Minnesota Wild is 1-6-1. 1-6-1. And that one win was a very convincing, like 7-3 win a few months back over the Dallas Stars at the X. But beyond that, they're 0-2-1 against the Avs. They're 0-2 now. Both defeats here against the Preds with, I think, 2 games left in Nashville. They've played the Blues just once, which I think was the Winter Classic. But the point being is, and I saw that this tweeted, I believe it was by our friend Nick Terhar on Twitter. Nick's point, and he's right, is these are the teams that you're going to have to play in the playoffs.
Yep.
And so while I still am, I like what you're saying, I am becoming more concerned that again, this is for like the 1,000th time, overjudged this team a little bit as far as expectation. I don't find them nearly as despicable as I did some Wild teams, but there is a concern. And I also go back to this one, Dex. Is Marc-Andre Fleury in goal going to save a blue line on which some guys just aren't playing well? And I don't think you can bring Merrill and Goligoski back. I think they're older players who hit a wall and now are declining and would need months off to get them back.
I do think Marc-Andre Fleury is able to make up for those differences. I do. he is in a bad situation in Chicago. He's a playoff tested goaltender.
That's true. I agree with that.
And it gives you more of a comfort. And I truly don't care that if you lose your 23rd overall pick in 2022 when your prospect pool is at its best. It was ranked what, Judd? Third, I believe, in the NHL about 2 or 3 months ago. So if the cupboards were barren or even average, I could say, hey, hold on here.
Right.
Let's wait. Let's let this team keep developing players because it looks like they're actually now developing their players in a strong suit. You have a surplus here. I'm an Office nerd. I love the show The Office. There's a phenomenal episode where Michael has a surplus in the office, and he has to decide between office chairs or a new printer. And he ends up taking the bonus and returning the money back to the company. No. Give the office and give the team something it needs, which is a goaltender. The Wild have multiple needs, right? Goaltender, defenseman, center. The thing that's going to make your day-to-day operations better is the goaltender. So that's why I would totally do this. And if it, my thing is, if it flames out, if the Wild lost in 6 or 7 games, 2 points I want to make here. If they lost in 6 or 7 games in the first round, but Marc-Andre Fleury came in and he played admirably, but just, hey, you just lost a playoff series because you saw you didn't have the size and you just didn't have the horses to compete, I would feel better about it if you didn't make a move. And 2, to the point of the Wild not playing well against those teams above them in the standings, well, at the same time, last year, we were all convinced, hey, get Vegas, because the Wild play Vegas well. We have historically played that team well. If we get Vegas in the playoffs, we love our chances. The Vegas Knights kicked your ass. They went up 3-1, and you forced a Game 7. Bravo, good to know. But in general, they kicked your ass when it was playoff time. So those regular season success and that historical success that you've had since Vegas in the short time has entered the league meant diddly squat when you met the playoffs. When you get to the playoffs, it's a complete different game plan and situation. So it's not to poo-poo that they haven't played those good teams well, because that is something of note. So
Sure.
that's worth bringing up and worth noting. But I wouldn't look at that as, oh, yeah, continue to punt, continue to sell, start back over in 2022-23. You
Right.
don't know how good that team's going to be. You don't know what injuries could come up. You don't know what the hell could happen. That's why I think it's worth at least exploring getting a goaltender.
All right, I'm going to tell you why I think that while I do think the goaltending is a big concern right now, I think there's another position, though, at which things are stacking up that might make as much sense to get help at. And I do think that Bill Guerin will make one move, but I want to tell you about a move that I made first. And that was my move to join my friends at Livia Weight Control, not Lost, Weight Control Centers. I am down from 240 to 203 pounds. That's right. 30 plus pounds going on 40 pounds. And I want you to join me in I did an 8-week challenge in which you get your first 8 weeks for free. That's right. You talk about a deal. You talk about the trade deadline. How about you trade in those pounds for a loss of pounds, and that you do it for 8 weeks for free? Just to give you some background, I lost 26 pounds in that time. 855-GO-LIVEA, 855-GO-LIVEA, Livia.com. Trade deadline, send in the pounds, join my friends, Livia.com, and you will find out that is a great trade to make as springtime comes and all your clothes start to fit so well. And Declan, those clothes, of course, include, let's talk about it. Underwear, right? Underwear are very important. And when we're talking about the boxers or the long johns from our friends at Chill Boys, well, Declan Goff, need I say more about Chill Boys?
No, you don't, because they are a two-way, 200-foot game type of underwear. Performance brand, bamboo fabric. I know we're getting a little warming up here in the Twin Cities, Judd, so we're hitting 50s and 60s. Those long johns might be going back in the drawers for at least a couple weeks, but I'll tell you what, we know we're Minnesota veterans here. You've been on this earth twice as longer almost as I have.
Opening day, April 7th.
You know that we're still going to get a winter storm, right?
I'm talking Twins opener.
Sure.
April 7th against the M's in town. And what is it always? A little bit chilly, right?
A little bit chilly.
But what if you got those Chill Boys long johns on?
Long john Chill Boys on. They can help you keep you warm. It's a Minnesota-based company. Tell them you noticed us. Tell them you found them through Score North, and they'll change your complete mindset. Just like Marc-Andre Fleury can change the mindset of the Wild's goaltending issues. Chillboys.com.
Okay, let me give you another position. And it's not center, which is
Okay.
Funny because that's the position that we probably harped on for about a month. And it's this. It's a big defenseman, and here's why. The 1-6-1 record against the Stars, the Avs, the Predators, the Blues. And I especially want to talk about the Blues and Preds. So the Preds on Sunday beat you, and they played a playoff-style game. And here's my problem. The Wild has now played, and I mean, this starts in March. The Wild has now played several what feel like playoff-style games. They get heavier. It's all about blocking shots. It's about sacrifice. It's about, and I mean this in the best way possible, it's about beating up your opponent. I'm not talking fighting. I'm talking beating up, physically taking the game to your opponent. The Wild is consistently, in my opinion, Dex, losing those games. Now, back in November, when we were skating, it was great because like they're fast and it's fun to watch. But the reality is, I don't think that the Wild right now has the ability, and this goes beyond the struggles of John Merrill and Goligoski. I don't think the Wild has the ability to play a heavy game. And that's where it intrigues me to have a big defenseman. And I'm not talking about a guy that scores a ton of goals. I'm not talking about a guy that, oh my God, he's going to rush up the ice with a puck. I'm talking about a guy that can set a tone, that can stand up at the blue line, that can play a game that translates to what we see. The Blues play it, especially in the spring. The Preds can. I think the Stars can a little bit. Colorado special. Like, so they're just a different team.
Sure.
But my point is, I really think, because I think the last time that we ranked these needs, I went goaltender, center, defenseman. The defenseman to me now has become more and more important because I don't know that you have a snowball's chance in hell without a guy like, in fact, the Avs, God bless them, traded top prospect, but they got Josh Manson from the Ducks on Monday. Josh Manson is exactly the type of player I'm talking about. He's not flashy, but a kick your butt. Again, these are all things that I am concerned about, though. These are all things that I look at the Wild and think, are they prepared to do this? Because if they are, I'll make the trades. What I don't want to do is have a pie in the sky hope. And right now, I think I go goalie because of basically what you said. Defenseman, center.
Well, to prove your point or to get your point over a little bit, it's cheaper to find a defenseman that can give you size and grit more than it is finding a top six center, right? Like the John Mansons of the world exist for a reason, and there's a reason he got moved. And even ESPN, our buddy Puck Daddy, Greg Wyshynski, graded this trade, and he gave Colorado an A- for getting John Manson. And look, like, Manson's a nice player. Josh Manson's a nice player. Is he an impactful, significant player? Yeah, he takes a lot of penalties, and he's a big size and bruiser. But in the playoffs, Judd, you know it better than I do, as we always talk about when we watch the NHL playoffs, that size and that physicality matters. So is Manson prone to taking a stupid penalty here and there and throwing his weight around and maybe even looking like a goon at some times? Yeah, he is. But you need that kind of dude. You need that kind of guy. So if anything, it's probably, to your point, more likely that if the Wild are going to, likely, not what they need the most, but likely that if they're going to make some type of significant move or some type of just trade, I should say, that's poor phrasing on my part, it's going to be for a defenseman because those guys are to be had. Those guys are available. You can find those guys that could potentially help you out and make you deeper and give you more size in the blue line, right? Instead of running out of Jordy Ben, putting out a Kalen Addison, who might be a nice player but lacks the significant size and physicality that you need from that defensive core right now.
And to be clear, this might sound harsh, but in my opinion, right now, you couldn't go wrong by scratching Merrill or Goose.
Yeah,
I just don't see it. I mean, Goligoski looks slow right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that they went from paying him too much and thinking, okay, we'll bring him back. And by this point in time, probably have re-signed him to a cheaper contract for 2022-23 to we're done here. And yeah, so I do think the Wild is going to do something. I guess to be as blunt as possible, I don't know if it's going to work. Like there was a time where I felt if they make a move, I'm super confident. My confidence has waned. And your Fleury or goaltending thoughts make perfect sense, but you got to give him support. And then you still have the problems at center, but as pressing as those appeared to be at one point, I don't know that we can consider them to be the most pressing things now.
Yeah.
Or most pressing thing.
That's this fun part they get to figure out. We're 7 days away from the NHL trade deadline as we record this on a late Monday night, so we'll probably have a flurry of activity as we get closer here in the next 48 hours. And by the way, Judd's Hockey Show, perfect place to be subscribed to right now on this YouTube channel because Judd and I love the NHL trade deadline. We'll be live, ready to break anything down that does happen right here, so hit the subscribe button on this YouTube channel. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify. The Score North app is a central hub for everything we do, so if they are to make a move, we're your one-stop shop. We love to recklessly speculate. We're the ones who like to throw these crazy ideas out before anyone else does. How come you guys talk about things that never happen? Oh, gee whiz, I don't know. The Minnesota Twins gutted like 5 of their core players in the last 48 hours, so that's why we talk about these kind of things. So
this is true. It's true.
It's a safe space too, by the way.
Can I give you a couple of your stats too, just to put the focus on how bad the goaltending's been?
Mm-hmm.
This is from our friend Michael Russo of The Athletic in his game story / Koivu story of Sunday's loss to the Predators. Cam Talbot is 62nd of 65 qualified goaltenders since the All-Star break with a minus 10.9 in goals saved above expected.
Yep.
Kaapo Kähkönen in the same time, according to your friends at Evolving Hockey, is 57th on that list at a minus 6.15. So I don't care what how much we like these guys. They might be great guys. You can't have that.
No.
Like you can't survive. I will say and this is going to be a bit of a cheap shot, so if you don't like these things,
oh boy, here you go.
Perhaps you should turn me off right now. Was it not fitting that on the day that they honored Mikko Koivu,
oh boy,
that this team let its fan base down, and that with Doobie in a suite watching the game,
was Dubnyk there?
Yes.
Oh god.
There was. It turned out there were a bunch of. So they brought Brodziak and who is the. There was another former player that they brought to the ice. Nick Backstrom. But they had a suite full of Koivu's former teammates.
Uh-huh.
And with Dubnyk there, basically we got a Kaapo Kähkönen performance that was an ode to Devin. So, yeah, that's not going to work either.
No, it's not. And I'm looking at GSAA right now, and Marc-Andre has been about a league average in terms of GSAA.
But he's on but you're right, he's on a terrible team. I'm not going to indict him.
Team.
Yeah, Chicago's defense is terrible too. Now, the problem is that I do think, I guess if I'm going to trade for Fleury decks, so if you convince me to trade for Fleury or a goaltender, I guess if I'm going to do that, I almost feel obligated to get a defenseman to help out. Yeah. So I guess I've totally flown in the face of face-offs, which I still would like to win some.
Sure.
But if I'm going to get Fleury, the last thing I want to do is get him and transplant him here and basically say, well, we're not a lot. We're not superior defensively consistently to the Blackhawks, the garbage team that you were just playing on. So yeah, perhaps you're right. It's become far more of a dilemma in my mind about what to do than it was a month ago.
Yeah, I think defenseman is probably the most likely path because it's an easy thing to acquire, but goaltender is the thing that I would do. I think getting a impact center it's out.
Claude Giroux is probably going to the Avs now. And by the way, so Gabriel Landeskog is now out indefinitely for Colorado after he had knee surgery. So the Avs are going to be badly in need of a top 6 forward. And keep in mind, Giroux is more of a winger than a center, but he can play center. But in Colorado, he would probably just take Gabriel's spot on the
Yes.
wing. The point being is, yeah, I think that price is probably huge. The only thing with the defenseman is I think it's a sneaky price. I think it's more than we think. But if you are going to make the commitment, you probably need to go goaltender defenseman of some sort.
Right. Well, if it's more than you think because there's a demand for it, but there's also because there's demand. There's a, or use my word again, surplus. There's always those guys, the Mansons of the world. Those guys exist.
Yeah, but he's gonna. But I mean that's a. Those guys exist, but they don't exist in mass. So like the surplus that exists among some defensemen doesn't exist there necessarily. But yes, I think that you could get one for a reasonable. It would be a price they wouldn't love, but I think that you could do it. The question comes back to: do you have a team that when they play playoff style games right now, Declan, they do not look like they can play that game. That worries me a lot.
I understand. I would hate to punt and just say, "Oh, we'll
I'm
start
just great.
again." That's what I would just.
And
be
for
so
our
upset
show,
about.
I want him to go.
Yes, selfishly and
selfishly, I want him to go.
We need them
But
to go. We gotta go.
But I need this team to stand up to a team in the sense that they look like they can play that game.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more and more playoff type games. Calgary back to back. I mean, they were happy with what, like a 5. What was the back to back here? 5 to what? 5-1, 5-3, 5. I think it was 5-1. They were happy with that. They're like, we came back and played hard. It's like, no, you didn't. That was a terrible game.
Yeah.
The Stars game a week ago Sunday, 6-3 loss. That was a terrible game. The Nashville game, that's a terrible game. So anyway, that's what worries me is they don't look right now like they stack up in a playoff style game, and they're going to have to, or just say screw it, which I don't want them to do. I want them, and I do think they'll make a trade.
Yeah, I think they'll make a trade too. We're excited to see what happens here. So yeah, we'll Judd and I will continue to sneak in some hockey shows when we can here. The Vikings and everyone and the Wolves. I mean, my God, Cat dropped a 60 burger.
Hey, somebody else got to carry the Wolves' weight.
Yeah. So we're doing everything we can. Speaking of 200-foot games, we are playing a 400-foot game.
I like
right
the
now,
Wolves.
okay?
I go to
Olympic
Wolves
sheet
games. I talk Wolves on Mackie and Judd, but
yeah.
We cannot be carrying a Wolves show.
Okay, yeah, we'll get Dane Moore, friend of the show, is probably devoted hockey fan right now. Is probably listening to this and saying he can help us out. Give us a flag. Thank you very much. I can't play the Bill Guerin clip because we did not win a hockey game. So hit the subscribe button on this YouTube channel for daily Minnesota sports entertainment. Download the Score North app, and we'll be talking to you. Pass, shoot, score.